tuning in to this bonus episode of the More Right Rudder podcast from the National Association of Flight Instructors. My name is Sarah Stout. I'm the Program Development Manager here at NAFI, and this episode is our annual promotion for SimVenture. Joining us is Kevin from PilotEdge, and he oversees marketing and client services. Welcome back, Kevin.
Thanks, Sarah. It's great to be back.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you. Thrilled to hear that SimVenture is on again for 2025. The plan for this episode is to mostly rerun the one from last year with some enhanced audio, and then we'll chat a bit here at the beginning about what's new for 2025.
Yeah, it's terrific. Yeah, we've certainly got some new rollouts that we've got for this year. The biggest one, if people have participated in the past, well, I guess real quick, it's a virtual Oshkosh for those who might just be tuning in for the first time and haven't heard before, and you'll hear all about that in the rest of the episode. But virtual Oshkosh using your flight simulator with the real Oshkosh air traffic controllers. So stay tuned to hear all about that. But for this year, for those familiar with the event, we are replacing our static flagmen in the scenery with all dynamic flagmen. We've kind of done a mix in the past, and now they're all going to populate in real time and with our server injecting them. And the reason for that, and the reason that's beneficial and a positive change, is we can truly adjust the taxi configurations and taxi routes in real time. It allows us to have more configurations. So we'll switch up the runways from 3.6 to 1.8, 2.7, 9, and all that. And then we're able to do that at the drop of a hat, basically, versus before we kind of had our hands tied based upon what was baked into the scenery that everybody downloads for free from PilotEdge. So that's change number one. We're doing a few more runway configurations because of that this year. So that's kind of change 1B. And then of course, as always, we've got our popular fly to win contest. Basically, all you got to do is participate in the event. You get one entry per landing and takeoff, and we have a prize pool of over $5,000 and growing. We're still getting sponsors all the way up until the event. And honestly, the most exciting part about that prize pool is that we have over 40 prizes to give away. So it's the odds of winning are quite good. Considering contests that you usually might put in for or sign up to try and win. So certainly, encourage everybody to hop on and try and win a prize, and also become more proficient with the Fisk Arrival in the process.
Yeah, as you'll hear in the main body of the episode, that pilot proficiency and familiarization is a big piece on why SimVenture is such a great event to be taking part in if you're going to Oshkosh, and even if you're not, it's a fantastic challenge for anybody to do. So let's talk about the dates. So I'm guessing the calendar has shifted a little bit, and the dates are going to be slightly different this year than what we heard in the
Yeah,
main
just a
episode.
little bit. It's July 11th through 13th. So just a 3-day event this year. We've done 4 days in the past, but we decided to condense down to three. We've got a lot of traffic, and it makes it even better if we have more traffic. So we're hoping to kind of condense that volume of people down to 3 days, kind of funnel it down so that we see even more traffic into and out of Oshkosh. And that's just going to make the event better for everybody. The controllers who basically they unofficially use this event. They volunteer with us, and again, they're the real controllers. They unofficially use this event to kind of ramp up and prepare for the next week, where they'll actually be up in Wisconsin doing this for real. And then, of course, it's better for the pilots. With the more traffic that's around, it just gets more exciting.
Right, yeah. In the last year, and what you'll hear in the rest of the episode, we did talk about that, and you mentioned how pilots, even if they've done this a dozen times, it's been at least a year since you've done it. So same goes for the controllers. So it's kind of fun to hear their side of the story too, and building up their proficiency and knocking off any rust that may have built up.
They're a great group of people. It's really fun to work with them. They are the best at what they do. It is really cool to see them get on there and just be able to do this. just like the real thing. And I think that's a testament to not only their abilities, but also what we've created and how realistic it is on both sides, the controlling and the pilot side. And another thing I want to say too, I love this podcast specifically because of the audience, and being at NAFI and most of the audience likely being flight instructors. I would encourage you all to also promote this to your students. Maybe your student is taking a plane to Oshkosh, or maybe they've been talking about it. Even if you yourself isn't going, again, you can still do this for fun if you have access to a flight simulator. But promote it to your student and promote that proficiency and safety. Let them know, hey, you can actually practice at Fisk Arrival before you go up and do it for real with the 100 other people up there.
And even if you're not going, it's still an excellent challenge in
Yes.
communications and in situational awareness. And, even if you're just getting ready for, a cross country to a busier airport or something like that, you don't have to be planning to go to Oshkosh to really get a lot of benefit out of this event.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably safe to say everyone listening to this podcast has flown with a flight simulator at some point, whether it was once at in your pre-private for flight school, or maybe you're an avid flight sim user at home. Either way, I can almost guarantee this is going to be the most realistic experience you've ever had with your flight simulator, and that's just because of the how dynamic it is, the controllers on the other end, and of course, PilotEdge as a whole. What we do is we provide ATC for flight simulators 365 days a year, outside of Oshkosh. We don't typically do Oshkosh, but we make an exception for this event. And so by adding PilotEdge just to your overall sim experience, whether you're a flight school or just a home user, you now are talking to actual controllers through the internet, through our server, and it really makes the experience a lot more realistic. But then you pile on the actual Oshkosh controllers on top of this with the Fisk Arrival, and it's the really blurs the lines between simulation and reality.
Hmm. Yeah, so in the main episode, you'll hear me talk about my experiences with PilotEdge, which have always been great, including when I got my hand slapped for being on the wrong frequency. So, just like, I've never done in a real airplane for
No
sure.
one does. Yes, no one has.
No one. Definitely not me. So, all right. That sounds like a great overview, Kevin. Is there anything else we'd like to highlight for 2025?
No, we look forward to seeing everyone else, or everyone come out, and pilotedge.net/simventure is where you can get all the information, as well as the rest of this episode in the podcast. And we do a lot bigger deep dive into what this event is and how it came to be.
Okay, yeah, and we'll make sure that link is in the show notes so anyone can hop right to it.
Great. Thanks, Sarah.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Bye-bye. From here, we'll move on to an encore of last year's SimVenture episode with enhanced audio. As a reminder, in this encore episode, you'll hear Kevin talk about different dates than you did in the first part of the episode. The dates from here on forward were for 2024. So if you're going to mark your calendars for SimVenture 2025, be sure to use the dates in the first part of the episode or on the SimVenture website. Hi, Kevin. Thanks for taking time to come on the show again. We're excited to showcase SimVenture again this year. Let's start with the basics. For those who are unfamiliar, what is SimVenture?
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, it's great to be back on this podcast. SimVenture is a way, really the only way, to practically practice, meaning practice in a practical setting to fly into AirVenture, the Fisk Arrival, even the More Right Arrival, and the departures. There is really no way for someone to prepare ahead of time in a practical setting, and meaning that obviously the Oshkosh Tower 51 weeks out of the year is just your regular run-of-the-mill class Delta. Um, and so if you were to try to practice the procedures, it wouldn't be anything like what you're actually going to experience at AirVenture. Similarly, if you wanted to do just kind of a tabletop sort of briefing or practice even, it's just not going to feel real. But we allow people to practice with everything involved, including the actual Oshkosh controllers that you're going to be talking to in air when you fly into AirVenture just a week and a half later, with SimVenture on your flight simulator. So if you have a home sim or you have access to a flight simulator, you can connect to the PilotEdge network, and you can fly in SimVenture, which is July 11th through 14th. And It will allow you to practice that Fisk arrival, that warbird arrival, and the departure procedures all 100% realistically with the actual controllers, having you rock your wings, calling you out by type and color, giving you a dot assignment on the runway, and all that with a bunch of people, a bunch of other airplanes all around you being flown by people just like you who are also practicing for the real thing.
That sounds like a really great way for people to practice flying into AirVenture. Like you said, there really is no other way to practice. You said people could practice at home, or if they had access to another type of simulator, they could log on and practice. Can you give us an overview of what types of devices can access this event?
So, because this is hosted on the PilotEdge air traffic control network, which every day PilotEdge provides live air traffic control for flight simulators. So, even outside of Oshkosh and SimVenture, every day of the year, minus Christmas and Thanksgiving, you can log on to a flight simulator and get live ATC for your sim. You can actually be talking to air traffic controllers. It's not AI. It's completely person to person. But PilotEdge works with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. X-Plane, which is made by Laminar Research, and Lockheed Martin's Prepared, and Flight Simulator X or FSX. So those are the four main simulators that people would have in their homes as it is. Yes, if you have a Redbird sim that runs with Lockheed Martin's Prepared, so that would be compatible with PilotEdge as well. And for those in the commercial environment, if you have some commercial grade sims, again, including Redbird, your sims are likely compatible with PilotEdge as well. You can certainly reach out to us or check the PilotEdge website to get more information on that.
So it sounds like this event is really open to a lot of people. So, Kevin, you mentioned the different flight simulator platforms that are compatible with PilotEdge. I've been fortunate enough to be able to instruct in a simulator with PilotEdge. It's really a fantastic tool. How do people with those devices actually connect to SimVenture? Do they just pop in and say, I want to fly to Oshkosh?
So there is a little bit of a setup process. It's a short one. There's plenty of material on the website, both visual videos and textual to help people get set up. But PilotEdge it's a network that you, depending on your simulator, X-Plane for instance, it's a plugin if you're familiar with plugins, but it just kind of goes right into a folder in your sim, and then it's a in sim connection to PilotEdge. The other simulators that are not X-Plane just run off a very simple application that runs in the background of your sim. And it's very seamless when you run it. You just connect and you hop on the network after that. In order to get those one-time setups done, it'll take maybe 5 to 10 minutes tops. There's plenty of tech support options available if you need them on the website. But once you get connected to PilotEdge, which is a very easy process, it just takes a few minutes. You do need a PilotEdge account. And one thing with SimVenture, though, which is great, is that we include the free trial accounts within SimVenture. So if you've never had PilotEdge before, if you've never tried PilotEdge, you are eligible for a free trial account, which is 14 days, which lasts for 14 days after you sign up, or 5 hours of network connectivity time. So don't sign up before July 1st would be my advice to you, because the event is July 11th through 14th. So that gives you your 14 days that you need. And then after July 1st, when you sign up for PilotEdge at pilotedge.net for your free trial, there's no credit card required, by the way. There's nothing to remember to cancel. You just need your email address and you set a password and you're good to go. So you sign up after July 1st, and then you just don't burn all your 5 hours trying to get set up. I would recommend trying to at least connect to the network so you can positively connect there, and then after that you should have 4 hours and 57 minutes left to fly for SimVenture. And then of course, if you like it and you want to continue flying after that time, it's just $20 a month. And if you want to fly more than 5 hours for SimVenture, then you just $20 a month for a month subscription, and you can fly for the rest of the event. So it's very inexpensive, compared to flying a real airplane, certainly. And of course, it's all just compiled within the same subscription as the normal PilotEdge user would have.
That's a really great option, even if people only want to subscribe for the 1 month. I'll say my experience with PilotEdge was fantastic. It's a level of realism that an instructor has a hard time simulating for themselves. I got my hand slapped for being on the wrong frequency once. But it was good. It was that actual level of realism. We were simulating being at a busy airport with parallel runways. I was genuinely on the wrong frequency. And they told me, and that's a level of realism that, an instructor would really have to plan ahead for. But in this case, PilotEdge caught the simple mistake and corrected it. And that's how it would happen in the real world.
Yeah, and being this that being it that it's the NAFI podcast, and that there are plenty of flight instructors I'm sure listening. Um, Oftentimes people don't realize, flight instructors specifically, how maybe little they know about, and I say this entirely respectfully, but little they know about ATC phraseology and the rules that ATC has to use for them. Um, it's funny if you ask a pilot, how what is the exact phraseology to, taxi to a runway? A lot of times, what the first thing comes out of their mouth is, well, like taxi to runway. No, that's wrong. That was 15, 20 years ago, but now it's runway XX taxi via. And, so it's funny how pilots have heard these things 1,000 times, but repeating them verbatim and pretending to be that air traffic controller in a simulator environment is not easy, especially when you're trying to coach your student. And that's why PilotEdge is so beneficial just on a normal everyday basis. Not even for SimVenture, but obviously this applies to SimVenture as well, is you can fully focus on coaching your student as the CFI and let the controllers on PilotEdge handle all the ATC. And you just react accordingly like you would in a real airplane.
Yeah, and even just the bandwidth to manage the device as the instructor. I was using this when I was, teaching some advanced instrument. And so by time you're trying to program, different types of failures or pedal blockages or whatever for your student, offloading the mental workload of being ATC as well was a huge help. So when people sign on looking to participate in this event, what can they expect? How long is it going to take them to participate?
So July 11th through 14th, every each one of those 4 days, it's a Thursday through Sunday. We're going to run for 3 hours on the first 2 days and 4 hours on the last 2 days. And so throughout those 3 or 4 hours each day, people can fly as many times as they want. It's really going to be whatever you make of it. If you just want to do one trip down the tracks, you can, or you're welcome to fly for the entire 3 or 4 hours and get the ATC coverage and the whole experience with that. Now, having said that, the entire arrival, by the time you get in line over the starting point of the arrival and you land and taxi in, it's going to take you probably, and by the way, starting with a departure from somewhere, of course, generally people will depart from either Fond du Lac or, which is a small offloader just south of Oshkosh, if you're unfamiliar, or just a surrounding non-towered airport, just something close to kind of get up and going and get in the line of traffic coming over Fisk. But that whole process is probably going to take about 30 minutes, maybe even 40, depending on how far out the Congo line is going at the time. So, yes, we do push back to Puckaway Lake or even Endeavor Bridge if we have to, in order to accommodate the level of traffic at that time. So it's all incredibly realistic. And, you can probably get 3 or 4 runs down the tracks every single day if you want to.
Let's say an instructor and their learner sign on, do this the first day, maybe a couple of times. Have they learned everything they need to learn, or is there additional benefit to signing on and doing this every day of the event?
There's certainly a benefit. We actually really encourage people to fly multiple times, and that's for several reasons. And by the way, with SimVenture as a whole, whether you are an Oshkosh rookie, you've never flown into AirVenture before, or you've done it 10 times in the past, even regardless of your history with AirVenture, everyone can use a refresher. Even those veterans who think they've seen and done before, it's been at least a year since you've done it. I can assure you that. And so it doesn't hurt to hop on SimVenture and just refresh yourself on the procedures and be proficient when you get to the actual show. So going back to your question, for that reason, we encourage people to fly as much as possible because you're going to get a different experience every single time. The likelihood that you are going to get, number one, the same runway assignment, number two, the same sequence or dot or traffic to follow. And even before that, And maybe you're going to get a different starting point on the Fisk Arrival. Maybe they're using Puckaway Lake versus Endeavor or whatever it is. So every experience is likely to be different. And even beyond that, we have different runway configurations that we swap up every single day. So you're going to get a different experience. And with that too, we incentivize pilots to fly multiple times with our fly to win contest. And what that is any pilot that flies into SimVenture during our published operating hours is and lands at Oshkosh is automatically entered to win one of our many prizes. We have a prize pool of pushing $3,500 now of across I think it's 8 or 10 different prizes that we have from some big name sponsors. Some that come to mind would be ForeFlight, Gleim Aviation, Flying Eyes Optics, and a lot more. You can see all that on our website, pilotedge.net/SimVenture, to see who those prize sponsors are. But it's so easy. You don't have to think about it. All you got to do is fly in the event and land at Oshkosh, and you are automatically entered to win one of those prizes. And you can continue to up your entries by flying again and again and again during the SimVenture hours.
That sounds like a really great way to encourage pilots to participate in this. Like you said, there really is no other or better way to prepare for flying into Oshkosh.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And we I will say too, we do have our own version of the notice, formerly known as the NOTAM, but the notice, as it's now called for AirVenture, we have our own version of that. However, it does mirror the AirVenture notice. I don't want people to think, oh, SimVenture is not realistic. I don't even get to use the real notice. If you put them side by side, the procedures are identical. The reason that we put out our own notice is we have some sim specific things in there. For instance, kind of a few tech support type of things, but like how to get started and some suggested airports to begin. So just a few little simisms in there that obviously the real notice wouldn't have. So it just kind of it holds your hand through the sim part a little bit more. But as far as the rocking your wings, the runways, the dots, the ATC, all the frequencies, everything, it is identical to the actual notice.
Great. That sounds like such a great way for pilots to prepare. Let's talk about how flight instructors can use this event, even if you're a flight instructor like me who's going to Oshkosh in the back of a Southwest jet.
Well, and so I'll kind of sidestep that question briefly to say that another great way to participate, for another great audience for this event, are people who maybe aren't flying in this year. Whether it's just it didn't work out, wasn't in the cards, your airplane's down for its annual. Maybe you're not even a pilot, and you just have always wanted to experience flying into Oshkosh. Now, having said that, you do have to have some level of proficiency to fly with SimVenture and really on PilotEdge too. You can't just be a complete newbie and not really even know the ins and outs of flying. But if you know someone, or if you yourself is someone who has a flight simulator, is very proficient, but just not heading to AirVenture this year, you can absolutely still participate in SimVenture and kind of scratch that itch. So as for you though, or any CFI that's going to the event or has students or fellow coworkers at their flight school going to AirVenture, it's an absolutely SimVenture serves as a great way to prepare. You can help your fellow students, in the sim ahead of time. Again, this SimVenture occurs about a week and a half to 2 weeks ahead of the actual AirVenture, and that's by design, so that you haven't left for the show yet. You're not too busy packing up all your camping gear yet. There's plenty of time between, but it's still close enough that it's going to be meaningful and serve as that proficiency tool for you. So as a CFI, absolutely get your students involved. If you have a flight simulator at your flight school, reach out to PilotEdge about commercial accounts and how they can get you on board there. There have been flight schools who have also sold Oshkosh preparation packages where they can, for X amount of dollars, their clients can come in and fly in SimVenture, and so it's a good source of revenue for the flight schools. It can be who are on the PilotEdge commercial accounts, and also just a great way to help spread the proficiency of AirVenture.
Yeah, proficiency is the big thing I was looking at because these procedures aren't terribly difficult on their own. Fly from point A to point B at this airspeed, at this altitude. They're fairly straightforward. The real challenge is the communication and the situational awareness and staying on top of all that and understanding when they're talking to you and what else is going on around you all at the same time.
Yeah, there's so much situational awareness that has to be maintained. Obviously, a lot of people are much more comfortable having a safety pilot or even just a
Mhm.
second set of eyes up there, whether it's, might not even be a pilot at all, but just, hey, look for traffic. And in that briefing too, and we've heard success stories in the past. This is our fifth SimVenture, by the way. We've been doing this since 2020, and we've heard stories in the past where pilots have had their husbands or wives who maybe aren't pilots themselves, but they've sat with them in SimVenture so they can kind of brief ahead of time. And again, what a better way to brief that? Okay, when we're coming over here, I need you looking this way because I'm looking this way, and have that extra. It's the CRM of even a non-pilot in your a small GA cockpit can absolutely be beneficial there. So it's obviously a lot lesser risk to be practicing this ahead of time and get all those mistakes out early. Hopefully there are no mistakes, but make them in the sim. And the great thing is the controllers are so ready for it. As I mentioned at the beginning, these are the real Oshkosh air traffic controllers, the actual ones who will be working the show 2 weeks later. And it's been so fun to work with them over the past 5 years and talk to them about things. And early on, we in our first and second year specifically, we talked a lot about mistakes, and we'll historically, sim pilots make more mistakes than real pilots. That's not to say that there's anything wrong with that or to generalize sim pilots, but with technical issues with your joystick or whatever might be happening. You don't have 2,000 hours in your sim. Typically, you have 2,000 hours in your airplane and maybe 30 in your sim. So you're just more proficient in the actual plane. But so we talked to controllers a lot about, well, what happens if they just start losing altitude or if they turn down the wrong road. Are you guys able to deal with that? And they just kind of laughed. The controllers laughed at us. They said, this happens for real. We of course we know how to deal with this. There are plenty of mistakes at AirVenture, and we just have to roll with it. And so that was so cool, and it's so neat to see it from their point of view too. When we're watching them, there's a lot of coordination going on, efforts behind the scenes of SimVenture, and we're really watching these controllers do their job, and it's amazing to see how good they are and how they're able to work that amount of airplanes. And SimVenture does get very busy, by the way. Last year we had over 2,000 arrivals over the 4 days. So it is a legitimate event, and we get rocking just like the real show.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's just all the more reason for people to seriously consider participating in this. It brings a level of realism that you cannot get anywhere else.
That's the goal.
So let's take a minute to talk about some of the updates to the scenery and things that are going on behind the scenes at SimVenture. What are pilots actually going to see when they fly into the event?
Yeah, it's a great topic. So the two big things that pilots have to download and set up kind of ahead of time, which is why hopefully the users or hopefully the listeners are listening to this, several days ahead of time from the start of SimVenture, whenever people are listening to the actual podcast and get time to do that. But there's a little bit of setup involved, and specifically, it's the scenery. We do have free downloadable scenery for all four of the simulator platforms I mentioned earlier for Oshkosh, and it is beautiful scenery. You can't get it anywhere else except from PilotEdge, and it is free for anyone with a PilotEdge account. You just go on to the SimVenture page and download it. It'll be available about a week ahead of time from the event. So if you're listening to this and you've gone to the web page and it's still not there, just keep checking back. We will get that posted with specific download and installation instructions as well as some technical support methods if you need that. So the scenery number one is critical for the reason that we need everyone to be on the same page with their scenery, right? Everyone has to have the dots where they're supposed to be. And then beyond that, uh, we have flagmen. Flagmen are in the scenery. We also have something we call dynamic flagmen, which actually get injected into your simulator in real time that will point you to where we need you to go. So there are some flagmen who we do have baked into the scenery because they always point the same way. But there are other flagmen who have to point several ways based upon where the current runway, active runway is, and or where the current parking location is. So we actually inject those into your simulator real time. So that's a really kind of special, magical moment with the event is when those flagmen start populating and point you literally to where you need to go. And beyond that, it's just our generous sponsors, NAFI included, who have branded tents and branded little things throughout the scenery just to make Oshkosh Airport come alive as it does in the real life. If you've ever been to Oshkosh outside of the end of July, you'll notice it's just a big empty grass field and it's not very exciting. Even the dots aren't as bright as they usually are at the end of July, but we make it come alive with our scenery, and that's with tents and signs and static airplanes. Again, the flagmen, cones, everything, and it really feels like you're there, and it's a lot of fun. So yes, the scenery, it's available to anyone with a PilotEdge account for free. That is downloadable about a week ahead of time, and that will be a requirement to get set up. In addition to the notice that we put out, as I mentioned earlier.
That sounds amazing. We really appreciate you taking the time and effort that PilotEdge does to build out the NAFI tent in the event. We are super thrilled to support SimVenture. This is a great way for pilots to prepare. It's enhancing safety, it's enhancing training. We're thrilled to participate. That's a pretty good overview of the equipment required to participate, how to get started, what pilots can expect flying in the event. But PilotEdge may have a couple more surprises this year. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah, it's every year we try and do something a little bit different, and really just additions. We never really want to take anything away from the event. So this year we're really trying to focus and capitalize on the kind of the show type experience. If you've been to AirVenture or really any convention, you go there, you experience something. Landing is, getting into AirVenture is sure a great uh, a great event and an experience in of itself, and hopefully it's a positive one. But typically, you then land, you tie your airplane down, and you go do stuff, right? So we want people to be able to, so to speak, do stuff, and that is so this year we're adding some webinars that are going to occur at the end of every single day, all 4 of our days. So we're going to have 4 different webinars, entirely optional, but it just kind of allows people to kind of stay in that SimVenture / AirVenture spirit and mentality, even after they've flown and quote unquote tied their airplane down in the sim. So we're excited to have 4Flight be one of our sponsors for the webinar. So they're going to be talking all about their software and what they have coming up too. They're going to have some cool sneak peeks of some of the software some of the upgrades they have coming soon. If you're a 4Flight user, you know how often they love to push those amazing updates and how many of them there are. It seems like there are endless tools in that app. There's also going to be a webinar about flight simulation in general and using it with live air traffic control. And then honestly, the one I'm most excited for, and I think the one that will really appeal to nearly everyone taking part of this event, is a live Q&A with Oshkosh controllers. How rare is it that you get to ask questions in real time with people who are working this event? It is such a small handful of human beings who have ever told those airplanes to rock their wings up at the show, up at AirVenture. And from both a curiosity and a safety perspective, this is going to provide both of those means to pilots. Please come with your questions from previous events, previous AirVentures of, there was this one year they had me do this, and why would they have me do that? And you never know. It could even be the controller who worked you that year, which is the coolest thing. But our hope is that you're going to gain knowledge from their answers, either from past experience or just something maybe you don't quite understand why a procedure is the way it is. Why is it that we have to rock our wings? Just something as basic as that. But hopefully, after attending that webinar, you can then go into more SimVenture days thereafter, and then into AirVenture with better knowledge of the why behind what is happening by those pink shirt Oshkosh air traffic controllers. And so I'm really excited for that one too. And there's going to be one more that we're kind of keeping under wraps right now, but you can check the PilotEdge website, pilotedge.net/SimVenture, for when we put that when we make that go live, and it'll all four of those webinars though are going to be really great series and something you don't want to miss. And then once again, that'll be immediately following each day of SimVenture.
That sounds super fantastic, especially that one with the Oshkosh controllers. I would bet people who sign on who don't even have their own questions lined up would learn so much from other people's questions. And, they'll hear a question and be like, oh, wow, I had never even thought of that. That's something new I've never experienced or considered before.
Yes, yeah, I know it's going to be a great time. I already feel like we're going to have to cut people off because the controllers are going to have to go to bed or something. I feel like it's going to be a frenzy of questions, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what questions people bring, and learning myself from these talented individuals as well. I've learned a lot from watching them do this, on the PilotEdge network and take their skills virtually. But I'm sure I'll still learn a lot from the Q&A that the pilots bring.
Yeah, I'm sure we all will. Well, Kevin, thanks so much for being here today. We'll wrap up our bonus episode there. I think that does a good job of covering all of the ins and outs, the equipment, what to expect, how you can benefit from this event, and what fun things you can learn even after the event. We appreciate you taking the time to come on the show, share all this information with us, and we'll look forward to having you back talking about SimVenture every year.
Thanks, Sarah. I really appreciate having me on, and yeah, we hope to see everybody out there and getting ready for their flight to AirVenture.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of NAFI's More Right Rudder podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe. You can get this podcast in video version on YouTube, or you can get the audio version anywhere you get your podcasts.